Hello, good crowd. I am thrilled to be here at Rotary International headquarters with Rotary International President Mark Maloney. He's an exceptional individual who's devoted the last 40 years to Rotary and the fight against polio and all the other good things Rotary does. So stick around. You don't want to miss this episode.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
Our sponsor, Johnson & Johnson, matches most individual donations up to $250 at caringcrowd.org. President, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
We're thrilled to have you and appreciate you making the time for us today. You joined Rotary in 1980. What on earth inspired you as a young lawyer to join Rotary?
Well, the answer is not as noble as you might think. I went to Decatur, Alabama, my hometown now, which was the hometown of my wife, and we joined her father in his law practice. And immediately, I started practicing in June 1980. Immediately, I was approached by the Rotary Club and the Kiwanis Club to become a member. And I was a young professional. It was the thing to do, and my father-in-law was in the Kiwanis Club. So it seemed to make sense for networking purposes that I be in the Rotary Club.
Ah, well, as they say, the rest is history. But somewhere along the line, you must have begun to appreciate that Rotary was more than just a networking organization. What was the catalyst for you?
I'd say there were two catalysts for me. One, just less than 5 years after I became a member of the Rotary Club of Decatur, Alabama, I became president of that Rotary Club, a fairly large club, 155 members. And my club has the tradition of sending its club president-elect to the International Convention. So I went in May of 1985 to the Rotary International Convention in Kansas City, Missouri. And, of course, that opened my eyes to the internationality of Rotary. Second, during my term as president, my club received a group study exchange team from Nigeria. And you can think of Nigeria coming to the southern United States and think of all those things that might go wrong. But in Decatur, everything went very well. And they went so well, in fact, that the team leader went back to the district leaders in Birmingham and said, that young man would be a great team leader to bring the team back to Nigeria the following year. 2 days later, 2 days after the team left Decatur, they were still in Alabama, I got a phone call from the Group Study Exchange Committee chair wondering if I would be interested in leading the team to Nigeria. Well, it was another 12 months until that happened, but that was an eye-opening experience for me to experience Rotary in Africa, to experience Africa, let alone Rotary in Africa.
Yeah. That obviously had kind of a life-changing effect that we can see in terms of your connection to Rotary. In what other ways did that change you?
Well, since we're here on the day before World Polio Day, one thing that visit to Nigeria had an impact on me was the fact that polio still existed in the world. This was in the fall of 1986. At that time, the World Health Organization had not yet set the target of eradicating polio. Rotary had the target of immunizing all the children of the world, but the WHO target was not there yet. And so I stayed during that 5-week period with 8 different families. One family was a German couple who was an expat plant manager, so who were there without children. So set that one couple aside. But I stayed with 7 Nigerian families. 2 of those families had children living at home with polio. And that just blew my mind that 2 out of 7 families that I was visiting, middle class, upper class families had children infected with polio who were crippled by it. I mean,
right.
and that's not handicapped by it. That's the more appropriate term. And I mean, they were mobile. They were not crawlers. They were on crutches, but their life was significantly changed because of the polio affliction.
That is a profound lesson to take from that experience. As you think about your efforts to fight polio since then, over the last 34 years, or 33 years since 1986, what are the key takeaways that you observe?
Well, I'm just one of the cadre. I'm not one of the polio eradication leaders. I'm one of the people who contributes funds to Rotary's Polio Plus Fund. I'm one of those who, so that I have a better understanding of what goes on, has been at a National Immunization Day and been at some other immunizations where I've had the opportunity to drop polio drops. So, I don't have this life-changing experience, beyond what I've already described, in terms of polio eradication. I'm just one of the many thousand. I'm not in a polio-afflicted country where I'm working day to day like Tunji Funsho is in Nigeria or like Aziz Memon is doing in Pakistan. I'm just one of those supporters around the world who realizes we have the opportunity for only the second time in history to eradicate a disease from the face of the earth. And what we have accomplished is dramatic. And I'm sure in other interviews with other Rotary polio eradication leaders, you've heard these statistics, but I'll say them again anyway, that in 1988, there were 350,000 new cases of polio each year in 125 endemic countries. This year, so far, we're, I think, something like 88 cases, which is actually an uptick from last year. But 88 cases compared to 350,000. And yes, we've got a couple months left in the year. But imagine the difference in those two numbers. And instead of 125 countries, there are 3 endemic countries. And in one of those countries, there's not been a polio case in over 3 years. And hopefully in the spring, we will see certification of that country being Nigeria, as polio-free.
It's remarkable progress, isn't it?
It is.
And you have despite what you say about not having been engaged as a polio fighter with a capital P perhaps, but you have been in Rotary since before Rotary made the decision to do this. 39 years ago, you joined Rotary. You've seen it pick up this charge, and you have helped carry that torch for 39 or 35 of your 39 years in Rotary. How does that feel?
Before the worldwide effort began in 1985, there was the experiment in the Philippines in 79, just before I joined Rotary. But yes, I was there in 1985 when Dr. Albert Sabin, the, whatever the term is, founder, discoverer of the oral polio vaccine, encouraged Rotary to take on this goal of immunizing all the children against the world. And it is just something that I have a tremendous amount of pride, and I want to do everything that I can to keep this organization vibrant to where it can have this impact in the world.
Over the years, since you joined Rotary billions of children have been immunized as a result, as a direct result of Rotary's work. Is that fair to say?
I think the number is 2.5 billion, give or take one or two.
Yeah, that's a lot of kids.
That is a lot of kids.
That's a lot of kids. Now, in India, I was there in India a few years ago celebrating the eradication of polio in India, and even then, I think the number was 178 million, I think, or 172 million kids that they immunized multiple times per year. I mean, it's a staggering effort, isn't it? The ongoing, constant need to continue immunizing, even in countries where polio is not endemic.
Right. I had the opportunity to participate in a National Immunization Day. Now it's many years ago, 1998, in Delhi, India. And this was immediately after the Rotary International Council on Legislation, which was in Delhi, and there was an effort that if you were interested, you could stay over and participate in a National Immunization Day. And I was with a group that visited 4 different immunization stations on a Sunday morning between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. And one of these was in a very middle-class neighborhood across from a nice clothing and shoe store. Mm-hmm. Another was in the slums that were built up on the grounds of the Nehru National Stadium. Very contrasting neighborhoods. And in each one of those immunization stations, they immunized about 400 children. And, you know, it was, well, they immunized 400 children. You know, even my Rotary Club could do that.
Yeah.
And there were 4 of them. But then I was told that evening that there were 3,000 of those immunization stations around Delhi. And of course, there would be even larger numbers in Mumbai and similar numbers in Kolkata and Chennai, and lesser numbers in, you know, the smaller cities that are only 5 million instead of
Right.
20 million.
Right.
And immunization stations in villages at the foot of the Himalayas and on the shore of the Arabian Sea. And it was, as you said, 150 to 170 million children were immunized in that 5-hour period. And those children did not arrive alone. They just didn't show up. I mean, each one of them had at least one parent or a older sibling or a relative or somebody bring them. And so, you know, you had this, 250 to 300 million people leave their home, go not very far, a few blocks, 4 blocks, to an immunization station, receive the drops, and go back home. And, you know, that's was almost equal, not quite, to the population of the United States at that time. I mean, we don't even get that many people to watch the Super Bowl altogether in this country.
Right.
Not that they should necessarily,
Yeah.
but just the magnitude of that is phenomenal. And it's an incredible partnership between Rotary, the World Health Organization, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, UNICEF, and the governments of the world back then, and more recently, since 1998, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Yeah. Well, it is a fantastic effort. As you look over your Rotary years, what are you most proud of having accomplished?
Oh, gosh. I'm proud to be part of an organization that cares for those less fortunate than ourselves. I'm proud to help make that happen. I'm not a great humanitarian in the sense of someone who goes out and sacrifices and goes off to the wilderness to do something. But I am a great humanitarian in that I help this organization make sure that it can provide service. One thing that I'm concerned about is making sure that Rotary itself is in good shape. And I've spent a lot of my Rotary career doing that in various committees, on the board of directors, on the trustees of the Rotary Foundation, and now, hopefully, as I am, but hopefully I'm doing it as president of Rotary International.
Right. You have done a lot of, you've had a lot of humanitarian impact, and as you look back, taking your Rotary hat off for a minute, what are the lessons that what's the key lesson? We don't have time for lots of lessons, but what's the key lesson that you would share with others about how to have more impact in the world, to do more good?
The key is connection. My theme, our Rotary International theme for this year, is Rotary Connects the World. That's what Rotary offers. It's very difficult for us, for any one person as an individual, to have a tremendous impact on the world. There are some who do, but we're ordinary people. But Rotary allows us to do extraordinary things. And the reason we have that is because of the power of connection, working together, coming together as a group to address the eradication of polio. And not just polio, but smaller projects, regional projects, clubs projects. You know, there are hospitals in this world that exist solely because of Rotary. There are schools that exist solely because of Rotary. Gay and I have visited Guatemala and many other countries, and the social safety net just would be, the holes in the net would be much wider, if that's a good analogy, if it were not for Rotary.
Yeah, great observation. As you look back on all of this, how has your Rotary experience changed who you are in the most fundamental ways?
Oh dear. It has caused me to step back and have a perception that maybe differing viewpoints are not so off the wall as I would originally have thought them to be. That it's a different perspective on the other side of the globe, and not even that far away, and that we must always take into account different perspectives, not just in humanitarian service, but in life in general.
President, what is your superpower?
I don't have a superpower. As I said earlier, I'm an ordinary person who, through Rotary, has the opportunity to accomplish extraordinary things. And every Rotarian has that power. I don't have a superpower. This is not an organization. It's the connection, it's the coming together that creates superpower results. It's not any one person by himself or herself.
Well, President, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Before you go, would you take just a minute and tell people how they can learn more about Rotary and the fight to end polio?
Well, they need to go to www.rotary.org or another website, which is not a Rotary website, but it's one that we participate in, is www.polioeradication.org.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you very much for being with us today. We wish you every success in your continued work to do all the good that Rotary does, but especially in your fight against polio.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure to speak with you.
All righty. Let's do some good.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
Thanks for tuning in to the Your Mark on the World show, the Social Impact Podcast. Please subscribe via YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify.